The thing I love about teaching the most is coming in every day and getting to work with young people. They are just so creative and willing to give it a go. My name's Emily Davison. I'm currently a pre-service teacher doing my Masters of Teaching at Monash University. Before I enrolled in my Masters of Teaching at Monash, I lived in New York for 3 years where I went to the Atlantic Acting School. I spent a lot of time doing a lot of physical theatre while I was there, but also spent a bit of time working on some television shows.
Like the Red Sea. They'd make a path. Because I wasn't nothing.
I did my undergraduate in acting. I actually went to NIDA in Sydney for 3 years. I just realised that teaching was something that really brought me a lot of joy and a lot of challenges, but also just a lot of satisfaction. So the kind of impact that I'd love to have on my students is just making them the best human beings they can be. In acting, you have to think about different characters' perspectives that might be very different from your own. If students have to explore that, it will open up their ideas and making them more conscious and I guess open-minded citizens. The great thing about Monash is that they offer secondary and primary teaching as a combined master's program. Something that I'm personally really interested in is looking at how drama can bridge that transition between grade 6 and year 7 for students that can sometimes be, a difficult moment in their lives. At the moment, I'm doing a Drama Victoria Theatre Festival placement. It's been such an exciting experience because a lot of the students that will come into my workshop don't actually know each other, which creates a really interesting kind of electric atmosphere because they're really getting out of their comfort zone. I've just really loved having an authority over the workshops that we've been running, which means we can really, rise and fall on our own backs, which will give us a bit of an edge going out into the real world of teaching.
Welcome everyone. Thanks for coming along. This is the Master of Teaching Information Evening for the Faculty of Education at Monash. Also welcome to the live streamers online on YouTube. Thanks for tuning in. My name is Rebecca and I'd like to begin by paying my respects to the people of the Kulin Nations on whose traditional estates we meet today, to their ancestors and to the children who we are educating into the future. I also acknowledge other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are present. So, that was a video of Emily, one of our Master of Teaching students. She's actually graduated now. But I just wanted to play that just to give you a bit of an insight into the Master of Teaching and the kind of diversity that we actually have in our cohort. I'm sure that there are quite a few people from different walks of life here with different ambitions and different reasons for wanting to become a teacher. So a really common theme that pops up when I talk to current students and also alumni is passion. People are passionate about teaching, people are passionate about learning and wanting to share that passion with young people. You don't have to be passionate about teaching in itself, but you might be wanting to share a passion of a particular subject that you're really, really interested in. So you might be passionate about history, or you might be passionate about biology. Teaching is just a fantastic way to translate your passions into change in the world, because you get to share and you get to influence and you really, really get to see the difference that you make with students. And you get to see the moment that things change. This is a total cliche and I really recognise that, but it's a cliche for a reason. The light bulb moment. It's something that all of our students talk about and all of our graduates talk about. The moment things change, when you have explained something to a student and they finally get it. They finally have something click in their brain and all of a sudden they understand algebra or they understand spelling, whatever it is. It's a really amazing moment and it's something that people tell me about all the time. Well, this isn't necessarily a common reason that people give me, wanting to be remembered or have a legacy, but this is actually something, it's quite true. When I talk to people, everyone remembers their favourite teacher. Even if you don't remember the name of your favourite teacher, you do remember the impact that they had on you. Whether it was that moment that something changed for you, or whether it was just the support that you felt, or whatever it was, everyone remembers that. And if you don't remember that, you might remember your least favourite teacher and the impact that they had on your life. So something that I have talked to our students about is some people want to be the favourite teacher, but a lot of people also don't want to be the least favourite teacher. They want to change things, and they want to make sure that the teachers out in the workplace doing their thing, impacting the next generations, are the ones that are passionate, are the ones that want to lead, that want to shape and mould future leaders. So I'm sure you all have your own reasons for coming here, but those are just a few things that really seem to resonate and speak to people about teaching as a profession. So what about Monash? You're here because you're interested in teaching. You're also here because you're interested in Monash. We're good. So we're actually ranked top 20 in the world for education, and we've been consistently ranked in the top 20 in the world for education for at least the last 5 years, but probably longer. I haven't gone that far back in the rankings to look. So we're currently ranked number 1 in Australia with one of the prominent education university rankings, and 12 in the world, and also 16th in the world in the QS World University rankings by subject. So you know you're in good hands if you're coming to study education with us. We also have an excellent graduate employment rate, which I know is important to many, if not all of you. I know a lot of people here are looking for a change in career, and you do want stability. You want to know that the effort that you're putting into your studies is going to translate into something tangible, a job. So rest assured that at Monash we do have very good records of our graduates actually going out and getting work. So just a little bit of an intro about where we are. So we're not at Peninsula right now, don't worry. You didn't get confused on your way. But our faculty teaches out of 2 campuses here at Monash. So we teach out of the Peninsula campus, which is Frankston. So nice little beachside location. It's a much smaller campus than the Clayton campus. And we only have one of the specialisations in the Master of Teaching offered at that campus, the primary specialisation, primary on its own. But I do just want to make you aware that Peninsula exists, and if you're interested in doing primary teaching by itself, that's where you would be headed if you don't choose to do it online. So Peninsula campus, smaller campus, really, really great community feel, quite different. Everyone's got their sort of preferred learning environment, and obviously the Clayton campus is fantastic, but Peninsula really has some value to offer as well. Speaking of Clayton, that's where we are now, except for you guys online. So we are in the brand new, well, I can't really call it brand new anymore, new-ish learning and teaching building. We opened this building at the end of 2017. So I still consider it new. It's technically still the newest building on campus. I'm sure if you've come from other parts of campus walking across today, you would have seen construction going on everywhere. But currently this is the newest building on campus, and I think it still shows and looks pretty new. It is a fantastic facility. This building was designed in partnership with the Faculty of Education, with the architects. So it really was designed with our faculty and our students and our teaching ideology and methodology in mind. So this building is all about collaborative learning and making sure that the learning spaces and the learning environments are suited to learning how to teach. So at Monash, we have 3 different ways that you can become a teacher. I just wanted to pop this slide in just in case we have a few people here that are in maybe a different situation, might be considering undergraduate. So The first way is you can do a Bachelor of Education Honours as a single degree. That's a 4-year program, and at the end you can register with the VIT as a teacher and start teaching. The second way is you can do the same degree but do it as a double degree. Same thing, takes 4 years. At the end, you register as a teacher. The third way, which is what I'm going to talk about tonight, is you complete another degree in a different discipline. So it could be Bachelor of Science, could be Bachelor of Engineering, Bachelor of Arts, whatever it is. And then after that, you complete a Master of Teaching. And after the Master of Teaching, you're then able to register as a teacher with the VIT, the Victorian Institute of Teaching. Now, if you are coming out of Year 12, or you don't already have another degree, another bachelor degree, then usually we would recommend one of the first 2 options as your first step. But you're here, so if there's anyone in this situation, you're more than welcome to stay and listen to the Master of Teaching, but just be aware that there are other options for you. But I'm going to move on because we're here about the Master of Teaching this evening. So it's 1 degree, but it has multiple specialisations. So when you actually apply for the Master of Teaching, you need to choose your specialisation at the time of application. So this is a decision that's quite important. It's a personal decision. There's no good or bad, right or wrong. It's really about you and what your career goals are and what you're hoping to achieve from your degree and in your career. So we have specialisations that go across the whole age range of teaching, and we also have these double or dual sector specialisations, the early years in primary and the primary and secondary education. So there's a lot of flexibility in terms of the different options that you have. You do just need to make that choice before you actually apply and commence in the course. So I'm just going to briefly talk about each specialisation. I think that a lot of it is quite self-explanatory, but we do sometimes get questions about these. So just in case, I'm just going to go through them. So early years education, this is offered at Clayton campus. It's a 2-year degree, and it's not offered online. Only the primary specialisation is offered online, the one that's available at Peninsula campus. Early years education is basically working with children from birth through to about 6 years old. So you're looking at early learning, education, kindergartens, those sorts of environments. You can also go in and work in childcare and things like that as well. But the benefit of this degree is it provides accreditation with a CEQA, which do not ask me to recite that entire acronym out because I can never remember the full thing. But basically a CEQA is the early childhood or early years registration body for Australia. So it's the equivalent of the VIT but for early years education. So after 2 years you'll be able to register with a CEQA and work in early childhood education settings. Early years and primary, similar, but you're adding in primary as well. So 2 years at Clayton, and you'll be working with, when you graduate, or also while you're studying, you'll be working with children from birth through to about 12 years old, so the end of primary school. So I get a lot of questions. So why would I just do early years education if I can do this degree and do both? Totally up to you. Some people just aren't interested in looking at more than one age group. Some people really have a focused idea of what they want to do and what area they want to teach into. But you're not disadvantaged in any way by doing one or the other in terms of early years. If you do early years and primary education, you will be doing less units in early years than you are in the just early years specialisation, because that's just the way the course is structured. It's still 2 years, so we need to make room for the primary education units. However, with this dual specialisation, you will still get all of the essential things that you need to be able to graduate and go and work in early years education. And you'll still be able to get that registration with the CEQA. You'll also be able to register with VIT to teach in primary schools as well. So that's the benefit of doing this double or dual specialisation. Primary education by itself, This is the anomaly in the set of specialisations. So this one is offered at Peninsula, as I mentioned, and it is the only specialisation that's offered as an off-campus mode, so online. Your choice, you can choose one or the other, but you can't sort of dip between one or the other very easily. It's really a choice of, do you want to be an on-campus student or do you want to be an off-campus student? Again, this is a 2-year degree, and with this one you're just focusing on the primary years, so about 6 years old to 12 years old. You'll be learning all of the essential things that you need to become a primary school teacher, so a classroom teacher or a generalist teacher. So you'll be doing all of the maths, English, science, everything that you need to be able to work in that integrated curriculum for primary schools. Primary and secondary education. So this one's a little bit different as well. We offer this one in the standard 2-year duration. We also offer this specialisation in a 1.5-year accelerated mode. Now, this doesn't mean that there's less in the course. It just means it's in a slightly different format. So standard duration 2 years, that's 4 semesters, 2 semesters per year. So if you were doing the standard mode, you'd do semester 1 starting in February, March, and then semester 2, then the following year, semester 1, semester 2. If you do the accelerated mode, you do semester 1, semester 2, then you do a summer semester, and then you finish up in semester 1 of the following year. So instead of finishing your degree 2 years later in sort of November, you'll be finishing 1.5 years later in around June. Exactly the same content for the course, it's just you're adding in that summer semester, which is slightly more intensive because it goes over less weeks, so you'll be in class more often, but the outcome is exactly the same. This one, you don't have to finalise your decision as to which one or the other you want to do before enrolment. You will have to choose one when you're applying and enrolling, but you can change if you want to later down the track before you get to that summer semester point. Oh, and I should also mention, so you will qualify as a primary school teacher, of course, and register with the VIT, but you'll also be qualified as a secondary school teacher in one specialist area. So, you know, the difference between primary and secondary education, primary is considered a generalist. It seems so reductive to say that, but when I say generalist, I mean everything. You're an everythingist if you're a primary school teacher. And secondary school or high school teaching, you're a specialist because you're not teaching everything, you're not teaching every subject. You're teaching 1 or 2 or sometimes 3 or 4, depending on which school you're at, different subjects to different groups of students, not just one class. So do primary and secondary education and you'll be qualified as a primary teacher and in one area for secondary education. If you're not interested in working with younger children, if you're just interested in that sort of 12 to 18 age group, then secondary education is the best choice for you. This one again is offered in the accelerated mode. So you'll be able to complete that in 1.5 years if you want to, but it's also available in standard mode if you'd prefer to just chill out during that summer break. That's no problem. This one will qualify you to be a high school teacher in 2 subject areas for secondary education. Now, just speaking of those teaching areas, this is something that we get a lot of questions about. If you want to be a secondary school teacher and you want to do the Master of Teaching to do that, you actually need to have a background in the subject area or areas that you want to teach to be able to choose those areas when you enrol in the Master of Teaching. So this list, it's not an exhaustive list of all the subjects that are offered in VCE in Australia or in Victoria. It is a list of the subjects that are currently offered as part of the Master of Teaching at Monash. So these are the specialist areas that if you come to Monash and study a Master of Teaching, these are the options available, provided you have a background in that. And when I say background, we're actually talking about an educational background. So you need to have an undergraduate degree with a focus on one or more of these areas. The number of units or subjects can vary depending on which teaching area you're looking at. So for example, to study mathematics in the Master of Teaching, you need to have completed at minimum a minor in maths during your undergraduate degree. Okay, so usually that's about 4 units. It's about 1 full-time semester's worth of study. But if you want to, for example, study, let's see, English is a tricky one because sometimes, depending on which kind of English you've studied, so if you've studied literary studies, then you just need a minor in that. But if you haven't done a minor in literary studies, then you need a combination of a couple of subjects in literary studies and also some subjects in linguistics. So it can depend a little bit, depending on which area you're interested in and what your background is, as to what you'll be eligible for. There's a website for this. There's all the details listing all of these areas and the specific requirements for each of those. In the course guide that you got when you came in, we actually have the link there. On the Master of Teaching page, there is a link to secondary specialist teaching areas. And for those of you online, if you head to the Faculty of Education website for Monash, you'll be able to find it there as well. So, basically, you can't have done a Bachelor of Arts in, I don't know, sociology and linguistics and then come and do a Master of Teaching and become a maths and science teacher. That's the essence of this slide. You really need to have a minimum number of subjects in whichever secondary specialist teaching area you're looking at. I hope that's clear, but if it's not, I'm happy to take questions about that at the end because it is a very common topic to discuss. Now, I promise I won't speak for much longer. I'm just going to very quickly talk about professional experience before I hand over to our special other speakers tonight. Professional experience is hugely important as a part of any teaching degree. As a part of the Master of Teaching at Monash, you'll do a minimum of 60 days. The reason that we say minimum 60 days is because the early years and primary specialisation requires a higher number of professional experience days than the other specialisations because we're catering to 2 different accreditation bodies. So we need to make sure that we're covering off all of the professional experience requirements for both of those bodies, whereas any of the other specialisations, you're only registering with one specific accreditation body, so you only have to do minimum 60 days. That doesn't mean that you do your 60 days and that's it, you can't do any other kind of experience. There are a lot of opportunities for our students to do additional work, volunteer work with schools. There are lots of different programs, extracurricular programs or in-school programs that our students participate in. But in terms of formal professional experience required for your degree to graduate, for most of the specialisations, it's 60 days. Now that translates into 15 days per semester while you're studying. Most of those placements will be done in a school in Victoria around the Melbourne area. That's where most of you are going to be based, I'm assuming, and that's where most of our partnerships are as well. But there are other opportunities if you're interested. So for example, we have the largest rural placement program in Australia. So if you're interested, you can go and do a rural placement. We've actually got students, I think they're still there, studying, doing a placement in Mildura at the moment. Having some fun experiences with dust storms coming through. And we've also got Bass Coast placement, a range of other opportunities. So if you're interested in that, then that's an option for you. If you're not, that's fine. You can do your placements, standard placements in schools around Melbourne and Melbourne suburbia, but there are other options. There are also options like Emily mentioned in her video, how she was doing the Drama Victoria placement. We do have different kinds of placements that pop up from time to time throughout the year, and if you're interested in those, then you can also look at those as well. The other thing that we have is international professional experience. So I sometimes get asked if it's possible to do a semester of exchange as part of the Master of Teaching. It's not, purely because of accreditation reasons. So it's very, very difficult to get an international partner that's going to be able to meet the accreditation requirements that we need to get you registered as a teacher in Australia. However, just because you can't do a semester doesn't mean that you can't do a shorter experience and contribute to your degree and your resume in that way. So we also offer the largest international professional experience program in Australia, and this is a sample of the countries that we're currently offering, but this gets added to and changed all the time. So there may be some additions, there may be one or two that aren't available in a particular year, but lots and lots of opportunities. Usually these are short term, so they're only 2 to 4 weeks, and it's usually in the winter or summer break, depending on which country it is and what the program is. Really fantastic opportunity, and I think actually our current student might have done one of these experiences. No, I'm mixing you up with someone else. Sorry. Okay. Well, I can tell you from speaking to our students that the students that have gone on this said it was the best experience of their degree. I think placements in general is something that our students generally rave about as being the time when they're most challenged, but also the time when they have the most fun and learn the most, because they're getting to apply everything that they've learned during their classes. But international professional experience, if you do have, you know, the flexibility in your own life, I know that's not possible for everyone with commitments at home and those sorts of things, but if you do have that possibility, highly recommend heading to one of our placement countries. I think that's enough speaking from me for the moment. So I'm just going to pass over to Maital, who is a graduate of the Master of Teaching, and she's going to speak to you for a few minutes. Yep.
Do like a
I'll just... It's all good.
Hello. Cool.
And it's just that one.
Cool. Yep. Thank you, Beck. Didn't plan to have 3 things in my hand at one time. Can you guys see me if I'm like here and all good? Okay. So, good evening. It works. I'm Maital Goffman. I graduated in 2017 from Monash with a Master of Teaching in Early Years and Primary. In this presentation, I'm going to talk about MTeach for short. It always means the Master of Teaching. In my case, obviously, it's the Early Years and Primary. That's cool, just so that I can see it there. But it obviously relates to the same kind of course that Beck was talking about throughout. So, this is my testament. This is what you're working for. But wait, there is more. So today I've got 5 minutes to just share with you. I'm just going to pass this along. To share a little bit about who I am, so put things into context, why I chose Monash and why the MTeach specifically. And more importantly, I will also share my experience of the MTeach course, and I'll give a bit of extra of the benefits that I gained, which I'm sure you will gain as well, at being at Monash. So I'll be very happy to take questions at the end or whenever Beck tells me that we're doing that. Okay, so to put things in context, I am 29, whether I seem it or not. I don't really mind, so I don't mind sharing. I have moved on, 1 second. Yeah, so I moved to Australia when I was 12, so English isn't my first language, but I do love languages and I do love to speak, so this is fun. I attended both private and public schools, so I'm really grateful that I've had those experiences. Straight after school, I did really well with my ETA, but I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I am quite a biology nerd, so David Attenborough, don't need to say anymore. And I headed to do my Bachelor of Science at the other university, which I really enjoyed. What I'm going to go on next, you can see I've had, if you do the maths, it seems like I can't do maths, but I can. It's just working multiple jobs and earning that experience. So why Monash and why the MTeach? This is me. It's actually in my uniform of Career Connect, which is part of Monash. Essentially, I don't even know where to look from here. I'm going to leave my notes. So basically, when I finished my Bachelor of Science at Melbourne, I was thinking, okay, I want to do teaching. And I had lots of different options, and I wanted to consider, okay, Melbourne has been great, it's been really academic, especially for science. I know Monash is quite academic as well. And I was kind of mostly going by my gut feeling, but also an informed decision. Going by the reputation that Beck was saying, top universities, really great resources. And from what I felt and what I researched, and I asked lots of questions, so I do encourage you guys to do that, I had a feeling that Monash would have even stronger sort of industry connections, which, as you were saying before, it's so invaluable to do those placements and to put yourself out there as well, because it's networking for your job for the future. So I kind of thought, okay, what's my end goal? And at the time, I thought, okay, I am of the Jewish faith, I'm secular, but I wanted to go into the private schools, and they are P to 12, prep to 12. So I thought, okay, let's do the Master in Primary and Secondary, covering all bases. But Monash has been great in that way that after, this was 2015, about first semester, and this is my favourite part, I did the unit called, let me see what the name of it is, because I wrote it down. It's very wordy, Monash likes acronyms. But this was called Learning at the Heart of Teaching with Julie, who hopefully still teaches because she's amazing, and Teaching the Power to Change with Niranjan, who is also awesome. And those two units, really, why I'm sharing it is because it actually pretty much, from what I understand, it might be for Bachelor as well, but definitely throughout the Master of Teaching. And it's so, it's such a humbling feeling as well to be at Monash, where you know it's a great university and you're doing all these philosophical sort of discussions, but they're also getting you to think, why am I doing teaching? And of course that comes from your heart and it comes from your passion and whatever you want to do, cliche or not, but it's definitely something that I really enjoy. I'm really grateful for that staff. And what else? So like I said, it was definitely fun and stimulating. I definitely was on campus. I don't think there's anything wrong with being online, but definitely I think this kind of course where you're constantly thinking, why am I doing that? How will the children react? Especially whether you have children of your own or not, or if you've worked before with children of whatever age, it really makes a big difference for me. We also, I think I've covered that bit. Yeah, placements, like Beck was saying. And like I said before, it's definitely go, do it, you can do it. Sometimes you do need definitely to juggle those jobs and having the full 9 to 5 or whatever the hours, especially for me in the early years, but even at school. But it's so doable. And the placement office, they're incredible. So just talk to them. And is it working? No, because I'm not pressing the right button. So what it gave me beyond my degree, which is, I can only speak honestly. So basically this holistic education of not just doing just academic, just that. It's really like I've had support from a counsellor at the start of my course when like I was moving houses and so many things were happening, and it was just someone to talk to, which was really helpful, and it's free of charge as well for students. Same thing with medical. You've got your medical GP and psychologist and whatnot on campus. You've got Career Connect, which actually is, I worked as a, what do you call it? It's a job advisor. So I helped with resumes and cover letters for 2 years whilst I was studying. That was great pay as well, great team, great support, a great employer as well. And same thing with Monash Residential Services. So they have, I think, about 8 sort of buildings or whatnot in a really beautiful place up here in Clayton, and I think Peninsula has it as well. So people coming from the country, or even if you're just deciding to move or whatnot, if it suits. And mental health first aid certification I did through working at Monash Residential, and the professional development that I did even about 2-3 weeks ago for Monash Alumni to, it was a lot about special education and things like that. So that is my little bit. I just turned it off. That was on purpose. And I don't know if we're doing questions now, if you want to do it after. Thank you. After.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Maytal, and I realised I pronounced your name incorrectly when I introduced you, so apologies for that. We will do questions at the end. I'll bring up Maytal and also our student Sarah, and I also have someone from our student services area as well. So we might move on. Oh, loves questions. Might move on to Sarah, who's currently studying the Master of Teaching with us. Welcome, Sarah.
Okay, hello. So I am a student. I'm still working on my public speaking. Please bear with me, smile and nod and encourage me. And Beck, I'm a rambler, so give me like one of these when I go on. Okay, so what is my background? I'm doing secondary teaching, so my method areas are biology and accounting. They're 2 very different areas. I did get qualifications in those in my bachelor's. And just a little bit about how I came to be doing the teaching degree. So I did my bachelor's at Monash as well. I'm a true loyal Monash student. And then I went and worked last year at an accounting firm. I was very lucky. I got a job straight out of university. But within about 4 months, I realised I wasn't feeling fulfilled in what I was doing. I felt like, I was working long hours for something that I didn't enjoy, and I decided I need to get requalified. I need to find something I want to do that I care about, that I'm passionate about, and that will make a positive impact on those around me. And I decided that that's what was important for me. That's what would make going to work every day worthwhile. Okay, so why Monash? As has already been covered, it's a really well-recognised institution. It's the best in Australia for teaching. I knew that I was going to get a great education and that I'd be getting all of the accreditations that I would need for my VIT registration. But ultimately, I had a couple questions. I came in the holidays. I didn't really expect many people to be around. I ran into a staff member who I actually know now. And in 5 minutes, she invested more in me than I think is like normal for a 5-minute conversation. And then I found a what's called a student engagement officer, which I'll get to a little bit later. And within 10 minutes, she had answered all of my questions or pointed me in the right direction. And compared to the other institutions I'd been to, that was really remarkable. Some of the other places I talked to, people couldn't answer my questions. They couldn't even point me in the right direction. So I would say the amount of support that you get at Monash is really, really great. So I just want to talk about that as well for a little bit. So specific to education, there are those student engagement officers who are students who work here as well, and they do so many things. They sit on level 1 and they wait for people to come and ask them questions, and they help them. They make a monthly bulletin with tips and tricks and reminders of what's coming up. They run information evenings, social gatherings, and what else? Sorry. and they also did like a mock interview session to help you prepare before getting that job with that, was it 93% of employment afterwards, which is really, really high actually. There's also, every education student at Monash gets a student success advisor who are there. You can email them at any time and they will check that your enrollment is correct. You can ask them about, if you do the secondary teaching, you have a big master's level unit where there's several different units you can pick from, and they'll help you, give you advice about that. Yeah, they're so supportive. My one actually emailed me at the end of the first semester to congratulate me on finishing my first semester. Yeah, they're just really, really great and supportive people. There's also academic writing help. If you haven't been at university for a while and you're worried about writing your first essay, there's Lynette Pistorius, who runs academic writing workshops. There's English Connect, which is across all of Monash. If you struggle with English, or if English is your second language, they do more like conversational English classes. And like Meital said, the placement team here is also really, really helpful and really supportive as well. And they really want to get the best outcome for you. Okay, so what have I enjoyed about the course? Again, placement is absolutely the highlight of every semester. I think if you talk to any student, they'll say that. You get to meet people who are experienced, they want to mentor you, they want to help you, they want to give you their experience, they want to support you and help you learn. And you also get to experiment on children with your teaching practice, which is always fun. Then also, to continue on from that, the other people that you meet at Monash or in the course are really, it's been to me the best part of coming back to study. Your peers, every person that I've met as a fellow student has been so socially engaged, politically engaged, environmentally engaged, know a lot more about it than I do, to be honest. And compared to where I came from, which is the corporate world, where I found that people were really detached from what was going on around them, coming here was so refreshing to have these people who cared about all of these things as much as I did. And that continues on into the staff. Like Beck said, this building has been built with our education culture in mind, and the staff really practice it as well. They really invest in you as a person and as a student. They will go out of their way for you, give you advice, whether it's academically or about life. Or I have a friend who was asking one of our tutors about if he could pursue research and what was the best way to do that, because you can just do research or you can go and work and then do research, and what's all the steps and the best way to do that and to really have accreditation and a reputation in that. And they're always just so helpful and so happy. And like I said before, the person that I met just randomly in the hallway, I wasn't even a student yet, they really, really invest in you, and they really want you to learn and have the best experience that you can. And I think I'm under 5 minutes.
That was great. Thank you, Sarah. Didn't ramble at all. Nice one. So now we've heard about the course and we've heard about some experiences. It's time for the slightly boring stuff. Hopefully I wasn't boring before, so I'm labelling this the boring stuff. Talking about entry requirements and applications. So for all specialisations in the Master of Teaching, you do need to already have a bachelor degree, an undergraduate degree. That needs to be either an Australian bachelor degree or an international equivalent to an Australian bachelor degree. And our admissions teams here at the university have all of these wonderful little charts and comparison tools so that they can figure out exactly what's equivalent. So even if you're not sure whether your international qualification will fit the criteria, you can still apply and our team will work it out for you. Now, we say we need at least a pass average, so 50% average. This does include all attempted subjects, so if you do have a couple of fails, those fails will be brought into the average, but overall, a minimum pass average. Now we have this lovely vague statement, I know. This requirement may be higher. The reason for this is because we do have at times competitive entry, because we may not be able to, depending on demand, offer places to every single student that meets that minimum requirement a place. However, if you have that minimum pass average, if you meet that requirement, I highly encourage you to apply and yeah, see how you go. There is one other requirement, as I mentioned and as we've talked about, if you're looking at one of those specialisations that has secondary education in it, you do need to have a background in the area or areas that you're looking to teach. So if you're looking for primary and secondary education, you need to have a background in at least one of those areas that were on that slide I showed earlier. If you're looking for secondary education only, you need to have a qualification with meeting the minimum requirements in 2 of those areas, or one of the double areas, which I didn't mention when I was looking at that slide, but we do have a couple of teaching specialisations or method areas that can be counted as a double area because they require so much study to actually qualify for them. So those ones are music, visual arts, and I forget the other one. Music, visual arts, and languages, a language. So if you meet the requirements for one of those 3 areas, you can actually study secondary education in the Master of Teaching without needing to qualify for a second area, because we count them as a double. And when you do your method subjects, which is the how to teach music or how to teach biology, those subjects, instead of doing one for each of the 2 specialist areas that you've chosen and qualified for, you'll do 2 method subjects for 1 area. I hope that makes sense. There is another requirement. There is one other requirement that's actually not on this slide. It's meeting the minimum English language requirements to enter Monash University. Now, if you've completed all of your studies in Australia, then that won't be an issue. You'll automatically meet that. If you haven't completed your studies in Australia, or maybe you come from an international background and you did complete your bachelor in Australia, but it's been quite some time since you completed that, you may be required to present further evidence of your English language proficiency. But we do have a lot of information about that on the website, and there is a link to those requirements in the course guide as well. And I'm also happy to answer questions about that too. Now, the other requirement that I want to mention that hopefully some of you have already heard about if you've been looking into studying teaching is the CASPER requirement. So this is not, for those of you who are old enough to remember, this is not Casper the Friendly Ghost. This is Casper the Friendly Test. So CASPER is an entry requirement to get into the Master of Teaching. So it needs to be done as part of the application and admissions process. So before you can actually enrol in the course. I'm just going to play a little video because I think it explains it better than I can. So bear with us.
The steps you need to take to apply for initial teacher education or ITE courses have changed. Why the change? Anyone can learn, but not everyone can teach. It takes gifted, hardworking people who are just as passionate about inspiring young people as they are about educating them. To help find those people, the Victorian Framework for Selection into ITE has been developed. From 2018, all entry into ITE courses will include a non-academic selection component that measures an applicant's personal attributes as much as their grades or ATAR score. At Monash, this applies to our Bachelor of Education Honours course, including double degrees and the Master of Teaching. Some of the attributes that you'll need to demonstrate include how motivated you are to teach, your interpersonal and communication skills, your willingness to learn, and your organisational and planning skills. To implement this, we'll be using Casper, an online screening tool designed to assess important personal and professional qualities against the selection framework. Don't worry, we're not changing our academic selection standards. Casper is an additional admission criteria, similar to how an interview might be used when considering someone for employment. With Casper, your responses won't be checked for things like spelling and grammar. Instead, you'll be assessed on how well you tackle the ethical and professional situations put forward. There are no right or wrong answers, just answers that reflect you and how suitable you may be for teaching. With the introduction of Casper, we're making sure that all of our students have the qualities needed to become great teachers. So when you study with Monash, you'll be surrounded by like-minded people who are committed to inspiring young, developing minds. To find out more, head to the website.
And there is a link to that website in the course guide and also on the website as well. As I said, I think that explained it better than I could, but there are a couple of things that I just want to touch on from the video because I think that they're quite important to highlight. Spelling and grammar are not important in Casper. We don't care if you have spelling mistakes or if your grammar is not perfect. What we care about is the content of your answers. I think that that's really important to say because I know people tend to get a bit paranoid about tests and the pressure that having a test puts on you. So I just want to put that out there and just remind you that that's not something that we care about. The other thing is the personal attribute thing. This is about personal qualities. It's not about right or wrong. So I think it's really important when you're doing Casper to just try to just put what your gut is, what do you really think. Don't try to over-analyse things and try and figure out what we want you to say. The assessors that look at Casper are very experienced and they are able to see what you're trying to do. So if you're trying to figure out what we want to hear, that will be evident in the answers that you give. So really just be yourself and say what you think. But from that, what do you think? Why do you think that? Having a reason behind what your thoughts are is really useful, and it really shows that this is an opinion or a value or a skill that you do hold. So that's just something to bear in mind. The other tip that wasn't in here, but I do want to mention it, there's not a huge amount of time for the answers in Casper. So we're not expecting huge essays, okay? But something that some people have commented to me is that they did feel a little bit more pressured because they didn't have that much experience or that much practice typing quickly. So sometimes a couple of people, not most people, but a couple of people have mentioned that they felt that they couldn't adequately express everything they wanted to say in the time frame because they couldn't type quickly enough. So if you're coming from a workforce or a different role or a break from study or a break from working and you don't have a lot of recent experience typing, I'd actually recommend to just have a practice typing some stuff. Doesn't matter what it is, maybe just stream of consciousness and just practice getting those thoughts into the computer because that will really put your mind at ease because you'll know that you have that thing taken care of and you can just focus on the questions and the answers that you need. I also want to mention that there are a lot of resources available for Casper. It's not something to be scared of. It's just another hurdle that you need to do as part of your application process. But there's a lot of resources that you can use to prepare. Even though you can't really study for Casper because it's not an academic test, you can prepare for it. You can get a sense of what the structure is like and what kinds of questions might pop up, and how you might go about answering those. So I do recommend taking a look at the CASPA website. There are a few sample questions available on that website, but I also want to flag that once you register for your test date and get access to the CASPA, system, you'll actually have a lot more sample questions opened up to you. So it's not just the few that are on the public website that are available. There's actually quite a lot more available. There's also FAQs and a whole bunch of information too. So really encourage you to take a look at that in advance of your actual test date. And on that, when you're registering for CASPA, it's an online test, but that doesn't mean that you can just take it at any time on any date. There are specific times and dates available for CASPA, and you'll need to register for a specific test date and sit CASPA on that specific date at the specific time. So that's just something to be aware of. All of the registration dates, test dates are available on the website. And as I said, there is a link in the course guide. And even if you're online, even if you just Google Monash CASPA, or I think it's takecaspa.com, you can easily find the information that you need. So, how do you apply? You've met the entry requirements, you've listened to me ramble on for a while, and you've decided that you're still interested in teaching. Yay! You can apply directly to Monash. So if you're a domestic student, so Australian New Zealand citizens and Australian permanent residents, you can apply direct to Monash via our website through the domestic portal. Round 1 applications have already closed, but that doesn't mean that you've missed out. We do have a second round open. It's open for a shorter period of time in January next year. So applications will open up again on the 5th of January for domestic students. And Commonwealth supported places are available for the Master of Teaching. In case you're not familiar with that terminology, this is basically like the HEX system. So instead of paying full fees for your Master of Teaching as a domestic student, your fees are heavily subsidised by the Commonwealth Government, and the fees that you do need to pay, you don't have to pay them up front. They are basically put into a public loan system where you can defer your payment until you're earning above a certain threshold when you've graduated, and those fees will automatically be taken out. Your debt will be repaid through the Commonwealth tax system. Of course, if you choose to, you can pay fees up front, that's no problem. That is available to you. Most, if not all, domestic students. It's very rare that we would have a full fee paying domestic student. International students, a little bit different because of visa requirements and issues. We actually have rolling applications for international students. You can apply directly to Monash through the website, or you can apply through a Monash accredited agent, and a list of those is also available on the website as well. Applications will close on the 24th of January. And as far as CASPA goes, we much prefer that you apply for the course first and then use your Monash student ID that you're generated and given to register for your test date on the CASPA website. The reason for this is it's just so much easier in terms of matching up and making sure that we get everyone's test results the first time around. Because if we don't have that identifier, then CASPA may not send your results to us directly. So that's just something to be aware of. If you've already sat CASPA and you haven't lodged your application, then you can actually go back to CASPA and add Monash as an institution in the CASPA system. That is something that you can do if you've already sort of gone past that step. I do also want to mention, because I'm sure there will be a few people in the room that have already applied in round 1 and are probably anxiously awaiting the offers to be sent out. If that's you, don't despair, they'll be out soon. Just want to mention that you'll hear from us soon. I think that is all of the talking from me, except for maybe some questions. So I might ask Maytal and Sarah to come back onto the stage, and I might ask Elise to come on down. Price is Right style. I don't have any music to play for you though. So you've already met Maytal and Sarah. Elise is actually one of our education success advisors that Sarah was talking about before. So she has a lot of course knowledge and experience answering multiple questions from students. I'm going to go wandering through the crowd. That's okay. I can help you out with that. There we go. If you three don't mind passing the microphone between the three of you to answer questions, I'm going to take this other one into the crowd and ask if there are any questions. Just pop your hand up if you have anything you want to ask. Yes, okay. Now I have to apologise, I do have to get everyone to speak into the microphone just because of our live streamers.
Excellent. I was just wanting to know, with Casper, once you apply, does Casper need to be done within a certain period? Is it within the first 12 months, I thought I read somewhere, is that correct?
Aha, so your information is almost correct. So I think the reason that you're mentioning within the first 12 months is because there's actually another test that is a part of teaching programs in Australia. This is the LANTITE, or Literacy and Numeracy Test for Initial Teacher Education. I'll talk about that in a moment, but first I'll just answer the question about Casper. So I'll come up the front again just so it's easier. So once you've applied, there are specific dates that you have to sit Casper, and there is a final deadline, like a final Casper date that you need to sit it by in order to be eligible for an offer. All of those dates are available on the website. So when you go to Casper, you'll be able to look at test dates and you'll be able to filter by organisation or university. And when you put Monash in and Master of Teaching in, it will pop up with all of the available dates and it will show you the last test date that's available to be eligible. So just pop in there and have a look. In terms of the LANTITE, because this is another test, but it's not an admissions test. So this is an additional requirement that's been brought in by the Commonwealth Government for every student that is going to register to become a teacher in Australia. So there are two components, the literacy component and the numeracy component, and every single teaching student in Australia has to sit and meet the requirement for both of those components before they can graduate from their teaching program and then go and register to become a teacher. At Monash, exactly right, we ask you to sit it within the first 12 months. There is a little bit of flexibility around that if you have any issues. Again, it's nothing to be scared of. I don't mention it in the presentation because it's not relevant for admissions purposes, but it is definitely a good question. It's nothing to be scared of, but you do need to meet those requirements, and we have a lot of support within the faculty for those programs. We actually had a professional development day today where we sat and talked with a bunch of different teams within the faculty, and I had a chat with our team that looks after the literacy and numeracy test at Monash, and they were talking me through all of the different support services that they offer, including pre-test support that's available for every single student, and then if for any reason we have a small number of students that don't pass the LANTITE test or don't pass one component of it, there's also post-test support before you try your resit. Unlike Casper, which Casper unfortunately you can only sit it once per intake. So if for some reason you didn't meet the requirement this time around and you are still super keen to become a teacher with Monash, you'd need to wait until next year and actually sit it for the 2021 intake for Master of Teaching. Unlike that, LANTITE, you actually get a few goes. So if you don't get it the first time around, you do have the opportunity to resit multiple times. And there is a lot, as I said, a lot of support around that and us helping you along the way if you do have any issues. Yes. Yeah, no problem.
I was also wondering whether the Casper test, whether we have to attend a location or can we do it at home?
Yep, you can absolutely do it at home. So it's an online test. You just basically need a space where it's a bit quiet and you aren't going to get interrupted by anyone. You also need an active webcam on your computer because that will be part of the identification and security purposes for the test. But if you do visit the Casper website, they have all of the requirements, system requirements listed there, so you can check and make sure that the device you're using is going to meet all of those requirements. But yeah, you can sit it anywhere. Obviously, probably more comfortable at home, or if you have a local library that has private rooms or something like that. Yeah. Okay, over here.
Hi. Is there entry for semester 2 or only for semester 1?
Only for semester 1, unfortunately, and that mainly works around our placement schedule and the number of placements available. Yeah, so currently just for semester 1 entry. I'll come to you in a moment, but first I'll just drop by the live streaming station.
How many contact hours per week is the course, full and part-time, for primary education?
Okay, well, I think it's quite similar for most of the specialisations. So maybe, Sarah, do you want to chat about the kinds of hours that you currently have?
Yep, so if you have so I'm from secondary first of all, so you have core units and then your method units. In my core units, we have, it varies between 2 to 3 hours per week. Some of the units will have a lecture, which is usually 1 hour, and then a 2-hour tutorial. Sometimes they're 1.5 hours. And then some units won't have the lecture and you will have a 2-hour, I don't think you'll have a 3-hour tutorial. In my method units, I have a 2-hour tutorial and a 1-hour lecture, or a 3-hour tutorial as well. So it's basically 2 to 3 hours.
Great. Maytal, was that a similar experience for you or a bit different?
Yeah, so I did a Master of Teaching mainly in the primary and early years, and even within the first year of the primary secondary, it's pretty similar. So having, especially if you have had, for example, a background of a Bachelor of Science, where in first year it's like 3-hour lab, an hour lecture, an hour tute. It's nothing like that. It's mostly very similar. Like you'll have, if you're doing the four units, you'll pretty much have for the primary early years, we hardly even had lectures. It's mostly just 2-hour tutes, which are quite flexible because you can either have the early mornings, like 8 till 10 in the middle of the day, and some units even have, I think, like 6 till 8. So they do, Monash is aware that obviously, especially for masters, it's people that are working, have families and whatnot, so it's quite doable. I think the big difference between, for example, for me, the Bachelor of Science and the Master of Teaching is you do much more readings in preparation for your tutorial because you're going to discuss it, and you can do that anywhere. So, yeah.
Sorry, I just also want to add. Because, like you said, the Masters is very flexible. They know that a lot of people are working, some people have kids. So obviously it's better if you can attend, you get that in-person interaction, you can ask questions, unpack the readings, which hopefully you've done, unless you're like me and you don't do them. But it's okay if you don't go. And you can post questions on the forum and someone will usually reply to you. Well, not usually, always reply to you. Yeah. Do you want to expand?
I'll just add quickly. Hello, everyone. I think Beck said before, I'm from Student Services. Just for students, or for those of you who are thinking of applying to the accelerated 1.5-year course for primary and secondary or secondary, the summer semester is actually an intensive semester, so it's usually probably most closely equivalent to a full-time workload. So summer semester, probably you're here for about 6 weeks, but you might have 3 days 9 to 5 in 1 week, you might have 2 days 9 to 5 in another week. So generally what we say, first of all, if some of you have applied for either standard or accelerated and you're wanting to switch, just put it in writing to us as soon as possible and we can see if we can do that before semester starts next year if you've got an offer. If you come in to, say, the standard 2-year course and then halfway through semester 1 you decide you would like to do the summer semester and you do know that it's intensive Attendance is compulsory, so you have to attend all classes for summer semester. Make sure you put what's called a course transfer application in for semester 2, because we don't allow 2-year standard students to do the summer units. So we had a situation, this year we've just had quite a few students in the 2-year version who've been wanting to do the summer semester. Unfortunately, it's a bit late if you ask in September, October. So I think it's just, you guys are at 12 hours-ish a week, semester 1 and 2, but if you're in summer semester, it's very, very intensive compared to regular semesters. Yes.
I'm doing the accelerated right now, so if anyone has questions about that, feel free.
And just on that, just wondering, with that kind of course load and hours, how many days do you normally find yourself on campus?
During the normal semester?
During a normal semester, yeah.
2 to 3.
2 to 3 days? Yep, similar?
Yeah, I'd say roughly the same. You can really structure your timetable really well in advance whenever that opens as well, and work out if you have 1 or 2 or 3 multiple jobs and work or whatever, you can structure it that, because it's just 4 units and most of them have the 2 hours, so you can have 2 or 3 on one day and 1 or 2 on the other day. But just do keep in mind that if you're doing, say, the 3, like 6 hours of full-on philosophical discussions and doing the readings as well, you might want to pace yourself, so give yourself the 2 days, and it will vary slightly in the semesters, but yeah, it's very doable.
Great. And I also just want to touch on, because Jen, our colleague Jen, who's helping with the live stream, mentioned in that question part-time. So the course officially is only offered in full-time mode, so we don't officially offer part-time. However, there can be an opportunity to do what we call an underload, which is effectively reducing your enrolment to a part-time enrolment. This does involve an application to the Student Services team, so you go through your lovely education success advisor, and there's a form that you need to complete, and that does need to be approved by the Student Services team. So it's not impossible, but it's not offered as part of the formal application process. So if any of you are submitting an application and you're wondering why you can't see part-time available there, this is why. But yeah, that is something that we can't guarantee you prior to enrolment. You would need to get your offer, accept your offer, and then need to talk to the Student Services team about your options and about how that will work. It does involve a little bit of juggling with course maps and things like that, but we always do the best that we can to accommodate you. Yeah. Now, I'm sure there are more questions online, but I might just skip over here and then I'll come back to you, Jen.
I had a question about fees. Are you eligible for a Commonwealth supported place if you already have another graduate degree, or is that only for people with just bachelors?
You can be, but it will depend on your previous, basically the amount that you've accumulated through the HEX system. So what I would do is I would recommend visiting the Fee Help website, Study Assist. If you go to the Monash website, you can access that information and go through to the government website through there, or you can Google the Study Assist webpage for the government, and it will lay out the different thresholds, and you just need to have a look. You can access any information about your current government debt, whatever that may be, through the MyGov system in the tax area, and that will tell you anything that you're owing through HEX, and then you can go to that government website and check what the actual threshold is and whether you've met that or not.
So if you don't have any current HEX debt, you would be likely to be eligible, or
It's capped at 104, just for reference. So
Thank you.
most degrees are like far less than that. So you can probably get a couple bachelors in if you want before you go over the limit.
So just for online people, just mentioning it's currently capped at $104,000, but I do recommend taking a look at the website just to make sure that you're meeting the individual requirements, because there are a couple of things about eligibility on there, but yeah, yeah, just because you've done more than one degree doesn't mean that you won't be able to qualify for those Commonwealth supported places. I'm right behind me.
Hi. What is the required minimum units for specialisation in general science?
In general science, off the top of my head, I think you have to have a minor, so 4 units in one area of science, and at least a part, which is 2 units in another area of science. So biochem, physics, can't remember what the others are. Yeah, but the full requirements are listed on the website. So just in case I got that wrong, I don't think I did, but just in case, have a look at the website to check.
Thank you.
No worries. I should also mention, which I didn't before, if you're worried about those methods or the specialist teaching areas that I've been mentioning tonight, and you're not sure which one or ones that you qualify for, doesn't mean that you can't apply. Our admissions team will do a full assessment of your transcript during the application process, and they'll be able to figure out which method areas or which specialist areas you're eligible for. So even if you have applied and you've said, I want to do biology and general science, or I want to do biology and chemistry, even if they look at your transcript and see that maybe you don't have enough units to qualify for chemistry, they might be able to still offer you biology and general science. So don't stress about that before you submit your application, because our admissions team will do a full assessment. Even if you haven't nominated a specific area, they may be able to find something for you. I would recommend, though, if you do have specific specialist teaching areas that you are wanting, so maybe you have multiple areas that you've studied in your degree, so you might qualify for multiple areas. If you have a preference, pop that in as an extra document as part of your application. There's no official place to put it in the portal, so just attach it as a document. Just a Word document, doesn't have to be anything fancy, not an essay or anything, just stating you're applying for this and these are the areas that you're interested in order of preference. That just gives the admissions team something to guide their assessment, and they'll do the best they can to actually give you the areas that you have put at the top, if you qualify for multiple.
You did get that right, Beck.
I did?
Yeah.
Yes.
Can I actually add something just quickly, just to the
course.
method areas? If you're a domestic student, when you get your offer, the method areas, if you're in secondary or primary and secondary, will be on your offer letter. If you accept that offer, those 2 method areas are the method units that you have to do. So just say you qualify for English, drama and media studies. If you accept your offer with English and drama, you can't then come into the course and enrol in the media studies units. We will pick it up and we will change it for you. There sometimes is scope for us to reassess you to see if we can move you into a different method that you've qualified for, but usually by the time we're doing our enrolments, like Beck said, the admissions team does try to give everyone as high of a preference as possible, but it does depend sometimes on student numbers, on the round that you get your offer in and that kind of thing. So I think if you've already submitted your application and you have 1 or 2 areas that you're really wanting over others that you think you qualify for, send us a message now, or send us a message if you haven't applied yet. If you apply in the next couple of weeks, put it in writing before, or just really as soon as possible, because it's probably easier for us to have a look and see if we can make changes now than it will be in March next year, right before teaching starts. So it's just important to know, because I think it's easy to miss sometimes.
Definitely. Thank you, Elise. And if anyone is having trouble finding contact details for the university, so on the back of the course guide, there's full contact details, but if you email future@monash.edu, that goes to the Ask Monash central inquiry system, but as soon as they see that that's something to do with an ongoing application for the education faculties, it will get sent through to Elise's team. So that will easily be able to find that. You don't, need to have a specific email address for Elise or for me, or, we'll find you, don't worry.
The answer, so don't email me. It will go to our admissions team.
Yes, that's right, yeah. I might just pop back to Jen, because I'm sure there are more questions online.
Regarding specializations, does industry experience assist when applying for a specific specialist area?
Short answer, no, unfortunately. No, and that's not actually our rule, that's the Victorian Institute of Teaching's rule. So all of these specialist areas are governed by guidelines that are given to us by the Victorian Institute of Teaching, and we need to adhere to those to make sure that we're getting you qualified in and covering every single base so that when you graduate from your degree you can register as a teacher. So unfortunately, no, we can't count work experience, industry experience, any other experience towards meeting those method area or specialist teaching area requirements. The only way you can meet those requirements is through the stated bachelor degree subjects listed on the website.
Can I add something again?
Yes.
Sorry, Beck.
No, it's fine.
I think one thing that a lot of people don't realise, I certainly didn't know until I started working in this faculty, was when you register as a secondary teacher with VIT, you'll have your academically qualified method areas. So let's say you do English and drama. Those are what are on your transcript as your method units. But if you meet the academic qualifications, so say you've done a minor in biology, but you haven't done the method units, you can still teach in biology. You can actually teach in any subject area. The VIT won't restrict you to only teaching in your method areas. It's just that you're probably more likely to be employed in your method areas. So it's kind of, I would think of it as you have your degree, which is your VIT registration, or how you get your VIT registration. In your degree, you've got your method areas, but then it's up to the hiring schools that you apply to decide what subject they'll actually want you to teach. So if you had a, yeah, of course.
So just to resonate with that as well, having done the primary early years, I'm registered with a CEQA for early years educator. I've got a card, and then I've got another card for the VAT primary teacher. But for example, in my case, it is good. It's important to know, I think, for your sake, okay, do I want to teach 3-year-olds? Do I want to teach 80-year-olds, or do I want to just be with the teenagers for whatever reasons you want? But essentially, for example, for me, it's like I said with the placements as well, and when you actually go and apply, especially within the private sector, like I've been offered jobs in early years, long day care centres, which I've done. I've done a preschool through a P-12 school, and I've also another P-12 private school that offered me to teach secondary because one of my native language in Hebrew that I could teach it. So it's not like Elise is saying, like, you're not kind of locked down, because once you have that VAT registration, you can basically, you're a teacher. And it's, like you said, it's up to almost the principal and what you put, yeah.
Thank you. Very helpful. Yeah, it's an interesting contradiction. We have to be very, very strict when we're admitting you into the course and the things that we can teach you. But there is that flexibility once you're actually registered to move around a little bit at the discretion of the employer. And obviously, as Elise said, it's obviously going to be easier to get a job in a specific area if you have the piece of paper that says that you are qualified for that specific area, because anything else you will be competing against other people. So you need to have something else, like speaking Hebrew as something that will enable you to compete effectively with other people. Back to you. Yep.
After completing Masters in Primary Education, is there a possibility to do a short-term secondary teaching course later, provided having done a specialised bachelor degree already?
We don't offer a short course to sort of, add to your qualifications. I can see Elise is getting ready to say something. I'll just hand over to you. You're probably more valuable than what I'm going to say.
Like Beck said, we don't have a short course. We don't have the graduate diplomas in teaching education, which I think went out of, I think they stopped a few years ago, 5 or 10 years ago. Yeah. So I think probably for someone in that position, it would be more likely that you'd come into the 2-year course, but you'd be granted credit. If you've done, say, maybe you've done half of a Bachelor of Teaching, or, you've done a Masters in Primary and then you've come into the Masters in Secondary, we would assess you for credit if you request it when you apply. I think, and of course, this is just musing, I think we'd have to assess it on a case-by-case basis when we got an application, but often The placements might be different in a secondary course to a primary course. If you're doing a straight secondary course, you'll need to probably do a full 1.5 or 2 years to get through all of the placement requirements. But I think if you're in that situation and you apply, either put a request in for credit when you do apply, or once you've been enrolled, contact your advisor and ask us to do a credit assessment, and we can see if there are any of the core units that sit across both areas that we can credit you for.
Great, thank you. Yes, I did see one over here. Just jingle my way over here.
This is also just regarding areas of specialisation, more specifically the list that you had up there earlier. I'm just wondering, for people interested in specialising in something that wasn't on that list, would they be encouraged to find another institution, or is there a way that they can still specialise in that area?
So if you want to, good question, if you want to study that particular specialisation in your Master of Teaching and it's not available at Monash but it is available at another institution, then unfortunately, yes, we would encourage you to consider a different institution that offers that particular thing you're wanting to do. If you're interested in an area that's not offered but you do have alternative areas that you might qualify for, so for example, psychology is actually a really common one that pops up that we don't offer at Monash, but maybe you have done as a part of your studies. For example, if you did a Bachelor of Arts and a major in psychology as a part of that, you probably will have done a minor in a different area as well. So we do have the option that you could consider, instead of doing secondary education, you could consider primary and secondary education, choosing that area that you did a minor in for your secondary specialist area. And then, as we were just talking about, you've still got the potential to be able to teach psychology in a school after you graduate. We just don't have the capacity to be able to teach those methodology or how to teach psychology subjects as a part of the Master of Teaching. So I guess really then it's just a choice as to figuring out what the best pathway for you is in that situation. If we're not offering something that you're looking for, whether it's the best option for you to go elsewhere and have a look at that, or whether there's an alternative that we offer that might still work for you. Totally up to you.
Hi. I have already a Master of Science degree from overseas. So just wondering if I can apply for Master of Teaching. And I'm more interested in research, research in Master of Teaching, and then research related to early childhood.
I think definitely apply. Yeah, for sure. I think when you apply, we'll assess the qualifications that you have. So whether it's a bachelor or a master's or any other qualification, if it's from overseas, our admissions team, I don't know very much about it to be honest, but our admissions team are experts in working out the equivalencies and whether a master's from overseas, from whichever country it's from, is equivalent to what we require for admissions. So definitely apply. In terms of research, we don't have necessarily a big research focus in the Master of Teaching. There's research embedded into the theory, but we do have a graduate certificate in educational research, which sometimes our students will do afterwards. It's a 6-month program, and then that can help you articulate into a PhD or a master's by research. So it's definitely a possibility.
Yeah, I'll just add to that. Yeah, so essentially you can't be overqualified to apply for a course. We're not going to, it's not like a job where, you know, you might apply for something and I say, oh no, you've got too much experience, so you're overqualified. I've heard that before. Doesn't happen with actually applying for a university qualification. If you meet the requirements, you meet the requirements. Doesn't matter what you've done after that. As Elise said, we do have that graduate certificate of educational research if you wanted to transition to research afterwards. But I know a lot of international qualifications do have a compulsory thesis as a part of the Masters. So if you've done a large thesis as part of your Masters overseas, then you may actually already be eligible to apply for research after you graduate from your Master of Teaching, or before if you wanted to do it the other way around. Yep. Yep.
Hi, actually I wanted to ask, like my education, everything I have completed in India, and we have moved 2 years back. I finished my Bachelor of Engineering, and I just wanted to ask if I have to write IELTS or only Casper and London is enough.
Yeah, if you've completed all of your studies in India, then I think you will need to sit an IELTS test, yeah.
But I finished my Bachelor, my mode of education is English.
It will depend. I think that there are some options listed on the website potentially might be recognised, but I think we'd need to have a look at the English language requirements page on the website to check that, and otherwise we could submit your application and the admissions team can take a look and then let you know whether it meets the requirements or not.
Like when will I come to know, like after the Casper and...
Yeah, so if you're applying, are you a citizen or are you still considered an international student?
No, I just moved into Australia 2 years back.
Yeah. So as an international student, applications are assessed on a rolling basis. So you would find out usually within a month of applying if you meet the academic requirements, and they would also at that time let you know if you have met the English language requirement, or if you they would give you a conditional offer if you haven't met it with the condition of completing the IELTS. Lots of questions. Sorry, did you have your hand up? Yep.
Sorry, that sounds really rude. Do the units you pass have to come, like, so when you nominate a specialisation, do they have to come from subjects you completed during your actual degree? So I did maths at RMIT and I did maybe 75% of the course before I changed, did wildlife conservation at Deakin. So would I be able to nominate maths, or would I have to do biology and general science?
That's a great question, and the answer is you can use those subjects from RMIT. So the units that you complete to qualify for the methods or the specialist areas, they don't have to be a part of a formal, what we call award or a formal degree, as long as they meet the university level requirements. So for example, we have some people that have completed their degree and they don't qualify for a specific method that they're really, really interested in, and they go off and they do 4 units with open universities, and we will accept that. As long as they meet the actual subject requirements, we can accept those. It doesn't have to be a part of your formal bachelor degree that you graduated from.
And is there a time limit on how long units last?
I don't think so.
A time limit on what's that?
Like as to how long ago you did those subjects?
That is a good question.
I don't think there is.
I don't think so. No. I think just make sure you put your transcript for the RMIT course in the applicant portal.
Yeah. I might just pop back to online. Is that, you've got something?
Through studying Master of Education in Early Childhood and Primary, would we be only eligible to teach in places in Victoria, or can we teach anywhere in Australia from an international student's perspective?
Okay, so if you're, for the early childhood, ASEQA is a national accrediting body, so you can use that anywhere in Australia. For the primary and indeed for the secondary as well, you're accredited, officially accredited by the VIT in Victoria, but that doesn't mean that you can't teach in a different state in Australia or in a different country, in fact. But you do need to check with the individual state that you're looking to go into, whether they have any additional requirements for registration. I think for most states it's actually pretty straightforward. It's just a case of putting in an extra application and getting that recognition. But if anyone has anything to add to that, no, just nodding in agreement. Excellent. Yeah, so it doesn't mean that you can only teach in Victoria, but you may need to do extra things. But we have people that go to England and teach, or Canada, or quite a lot of Commonwealth countries, and sometimes other countries as well. We have students that go to China and teach in schools. Yeah.
With secondary teaching, is substitute teaching something you could do as well?
Definitely, yeah. Yep, definitely. It's something you can do with any of those. Teaching is one of those jobs that it does have a lot of different options in terms of what you can do. You can get a full-time ongoing contract. You can get, you can do maternity leave contracts or short-term things, or you can be sort of casual and go in and do relief teaching. So there are lots of options.
Just to be clear, as in outside of your specialisation, like if a school needed, like a teacher was sick and they needed a substitute teacher for the day, is that something that's possible?
Sorry, that's my bad. Yeah, it could be possible, but again, it would be at the discretion of the school that was looking to hire you. So, yeah.
So what it's called, at least in Victoria, I'm sure it's probably the same in other states, but CRT, casual relief teaching, and there's essentially a couple of main options. You can either actually especially if you've done a placement, but even if you haven't, you can contact the schools, whether it's primary or secondary, and say, hey, I've just graduated, or even before you graduate, I think before you graduate, you're not registered with VAT yet, so it's probably leave it for later. But you can either contact the schools directly, or there's lots of agencies, which it's free for us as teachers. You need to kind of look at the contract of some will offer a few days a week, and if they might have guarantee, but it means that, when you get a contract position from the school will need to pay a particular fee. So it is definitely possible, and you wouldn't, especially if you go through the agency, but whether it's agency or direct through the schools, it doesn't really matter so much, I would say, even in the secondary, definitely in primary, because we're generalist and we teach everything, but yeah, you could be a biology teacher and be on an agency with the agency, and I'm pretty sure they'll probably have that chat of doing other CRT as needed, because you're registered as a teacher. Yeah.
And it's the same for secondary. Once you get your VIT registration or a provisional registration, you can start working, and you can either do it through an organisation, which will guarantee you more work usually, but yeah, they'll take a portion of your CRT pay, or you can apply directly with the school, and that'll obviously be a bit more dependent on whether or not teachers are sick, but you get the full CRT pay that way.
Okay. Can you please speak about the pros and cons of online versus on-campus study?
Well, I think, unless anyone else wants to jump in, I think, Maytal, you mentioned that face-to-face was your preference. I think it's really an individual thing. At Monash, we take great pains to make sure that the content and as much as possible the experience for students is the same as whether they're studying on campus or online. However, of course, there is a difference. You're not physically in the same place as your fellow students or as your teacher. There is still a lot of support for studying online, but pros and cons, I think in general it's fairly clear. It's going to depend on how you prefer to learn and whether you think that you, have the motivation to be able to study online, because obviously not being in the classroom with other people, it will require a bit more self-reliance and a bit more self-motivation to be able to study online, as opposed to coming in and having that impetus to be a part of things, whereas, it's a bit harder to motivate yourself to log on and do something if you don't have someone that's going to notice that you're not there in class. But really, yeah, I think it's a personal thing. I just want to remind everyone that the online option's only for that primary specialisation. So that would be a choice of either studying at the Peninsula campus or studying it online.
Beck, can I add something to that?
Yeah,
so I'm obviously on campus, but as both primary, secondary and primary early years cohorts, Moodle is the Monash website where you get tons of information about your course. So sometimes it can be overwhelming. It takes about a semester to get used to it, but it's definitely, I don't think there's a disadvantage for the online, because Moodle is basically this hub of where your readings are, how you go and use the library website, obviously, and that's done online anyway. And you also have the forums that both on campus and online students, I think, often use, and it's the same teaching stuff as well. You might have just a different tutor, but it's really, like you said, I think it just depends on what suits your needs. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I don't think you are disadvantaged by being online.
not
It's
at
just a
all.
personal thing. Yeah. I did see a couple more hands up, so I might come back to you, Jen, if we have time online. I'll just pop up here.
I feel a bit embarrassed actually asking my question because I'm clearly very disorganised, but I haven't done my applications yet and had no idea that round one was already done.
That's no problem.
So I wanted to, I guess, ask, there were dates there, 5th of January to the 24th.
Yep.
Can we apply, for example, tomorrow? Is there a chance we'll actually get in? And then do we then wait until the 24th of January? Is that how it works?
So you can't apply currently, so the portal's actually currently closed. So you'd need to wait until the 5th of January to be able to lodge your application. So then each round, at the end of the round, applications will close and then a certain period of time passes before you receive your offer. I can't actually remember what the offer release dates are. I know for the first round it's quite soon. Oh, Elise remembers?
So round one is from the 29th. So it won't necessarily be on the 29th, but it'll be from the 29th. Round two, I can't remember off the top of my head, but I can check for you.
It's a quicker turnaround time for round two. I do remember that, so you don't have to wait a month because semester starts obviously a lot closer to the end of the round two applications. But on the website there is actually the application dates and also when the offer release dates are.
And then I presume you apply and do CASPA in and around the same time. You don't wait for here's your letter subject to you passing CASPA.
Yep, that's right. So you actually submit your application and then when you receive your acknowledgement of your application, it'll give you an ID number and you can use that ID number to sit CASPA. So you don't actually wait until you get your offer to sit CASPA.
Sorry, if I can just add to that.
Oh, yeah.
So I was very disorganised last year. I was working full-time and I didn't even know that I wanted to do teaching until around November last year. So I applied mid-December in the second round offers. I did my CASPA in January and I got my offer late-ish February. And then I started uni like 2 weeks later. Actually, no, it's probably more mid-February.
Yeah, so round two offers definitely happen. The dates are different this year, but yeah.
But yeah, if you're interested and you've missed first round, by all means, go for it.
Great.
Hello. I have an irrelevant degree, so I'm doing primary school teaching. I did audio engineering, but before I did that, I taught music to kids after school for about 6 years. And obviously the primary school is general, but I'm wondering, how do people become music and art and sport teachers, or do any primary school teacher have an opportunity to also teach those subjects?
This is a tricky one. Elise, do you know about this one or do you want me to have a go?
I think we can both have a go. Excellent. For sport, there's a specific health and physical education course. I think for anyone who is interested, so this is kind of diverging a little bit, but if anyone is interested in PE teaching and doesn't think that they've met the method requirements for PE, I would recommend that you consider doing the Bachelor in Health and Physical Education because it's a really tricky area to be qualified in unless you've got the specific qualification. In terms of primary, the single degree, you don't have a method like you do with the secondary one, so you won't really have the chance of specialising in one specific area unless you're doing the primary and secondary program. Because primary teachers are generalist teachers, in my understanding it would be more about using the qualification that you have as well as your work experience as a means of, I suppose, promoting yourself or applying to schools to work in. I think the bachelor degree is a little bit more flexible, but for the masters it would probably be using the combination of degree and work experience. But please correct me if you think that's wrong, Beck.
That would be my understanding as well, yeah. That you don't have to have a specific qualification to be able to be a specialist music or art teacher or in primary schools. So it would be a matter of using that experience to get yourself that job.
And you do also, and again, this is going from memory, so I probably should have the map in front of me. There are a couple of units in the primary education specialisation that are specific to art and music and design education. It's probably not one unit that focuses on music, but it's certainly included in some way.
Yes.
So you can say, you know, if you were going to a primary school, you were applying, you can say that you do have academic study in that area. It would just, I suppose, be a case of also using your work experience.
Okay, I think we're running very close to time, so I'm just going to pop over here, and because you haven't had a chance yet.
Hi, I just want to ask you, I have an accounting degree. I'm just wondering, should I, when I want to like specialize in secondary school, should I teach accounting or I can't? Because when I go through the subject, what I should study, I saw like you can go through all the subject and study, like pick any subject you want, or I have to specialize with the accounting?
You would have to specialise in accounting or any other area that you meet the requirement for. So if you've done an accounting degree, but maybe you've also done the equivalent of a minor in economics or business management or something else, then you could also look at that. But you can't pick a subject that's outside of your area of expertise. You'd need to, if you're really keen on doing a particular area that you don't meet the requirements for. As I mentioned, we have had students before go and do single unit studies and things like that. That is an option, but basically if you don't meet those subject requirements for a particular specialist area, you're not able to enrol into that particular area.
How about math?
Maths, we can't use business mathematics to meet the maths requirement. It needs to be maths through a Faculty of Science or Department of Mathematics, because it's quite different kind of mathematics. It's very specific requirements. So if your only maths is maths from a business perspective, we wouldn't be able to use that, unfortunately.
Okay, thank you.
No worries. Okay, I think we had one more back here, and then we might need to...
I completed my CASPA already, but I used my current student ID at Monash to do it. Will you guys know that it's me, or do I need to...
We'll know it's you. Yep, no problem. We might wrap up. Jen, do you have any pressing questions from online? No? All good? All right, I think we might need to wrap... Ooh, one last question, and then we'll wrap up.
Thanks. All right, for myself, actually, English is not my first language, and I finished my undergraduate overseas, and I moved to Australia in 2006 and finished my master degree in Australia. Mm-hmm. If I want to apply for the Master of Teaching, do I need to sit on the English exam?
It depends how long ago you completed your master's degree.
Well, I got my degree in 2010.
Yep. So in that case, there's a timing requirement for meeting English language requirements through education if your whole education wasn't done in Australia in English. So in your requirement, I think you will be required to meet the IELTS requirement or equivalent English language test.
Okay, so I need to stick on the exam.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you.
No worries.
Can I think there's one more question. She's had her hand up for a while.
I'm so sorry. I've had my back to you.
We've got a couple more minutes.
It might have already been covered, but it's a pretty similar question to the primary school one that you had. So if I wanted to study only secondary teaching, but then after I graduated, say I wanted to become a primary school teacher, is that still something that I could do?
Technically, correct me if I'm wrong, Beck, or anyone else, the way we think about it in student services is kind of like a top-down approach. So if you've got a secondary qualification,
That's what I figured,
you can technically work in primary schools. Whereas if you have a primary qualification, it might be a bit trickier to teach up into secondary. I will say I don't work for VIT, so I think it's always best to check these things with the Victorian Institute of Teaching, just because I'd hate for me to say something like this at an information night and then you graduate and you're like, oh, Elise told me 3 years ago that I could do this and she was wrong. But my understanding is it's top down, and it'll just again kind of be at the discretion of a school to hire you. Yeah.
Because I think I had the question mainly because I originally wanted to study just secondary teaching because I was mostly interested in teaching teenagers, and then I saw that Monash had both primary and secondary, and it's like I think the only uni that does that.
I could find.
Not everyone does it, but yeah.
And I was like, maybe I might want to become a primary school teacher, so I thought I should do that degree if I wanted to do that. But yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No worries. Okay, is there anyone else I've been ignoring, Elise? Have you been? Sorry about that. Okay, well, we might wrap up then. Thanks everyone so much for coming along. Thank you very much to Maytal and to Sarah and to Elise for helping me out with some tricky questions and also for presenting and giving a completely different perspective that I can never give. Really appreciate it. If you are waiting for your offer, hang tight, try not to stress, we'll be with you soon. If you haven't applied yet, please do feel free to apply for round 2. As I said, opens on the 5th of January. If you have any questions in the meantime, we're here. We've got those contact details up there. As I said before, that'll go through to the Monash system of general inquiry. They actually have a lot of training and they can answer a lot of questions, but if there's something that they can't answer, it'll be referred through to the faculty, and depending on what the question is, it might come to me or it might come to Jen, who's been on the computer tonight, or maybe even Elise or our admissions team. So there's always help, even bumping into it in the corridor. And student ambassadors as well. So we have a lot of resources, we have a lot of answers, even though you have a lot of questions. So thanks again, and hope to see you on campus or on Moodle online next year. Thank you.